Live from the campus of Community of Grace Lutheran Church in Peoria, Arizona, it is the Grace Rises Town Hall meeting with your pastor, Pastor Tim. We're on a budget, so that's the best we could do. I got to do my own introductions. Hey, it's good to have you with us today. I'm coming to you live right now on TV. Isn't that something? Facebook, YouTube. And glad you're joining us. I know you have a lot of choices tonight on TV. We've got over on ABC, Kojak is on right now. And over on NBC, $6 Million Man, and on CBS, The Sonny and Cher Show. So we're really glad that you've decided to join us for our town hall meeting today. What we're going to do, because obviously these have been really unique times, is we're going to spend a little bit of time today reviewing where we've been. I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. I want to talk more about where we think we're headed. And just to give you some insights into what we've been thinking as a staff and the board. And we're going to give you an opportunity, if you would like, to ask questions. So if you're watching via Facebook, at any time you can type in a question in the comment section. And Jeff's going to keep track of those. And I'm going to give him some opportunities once in a while to interrupt me, and we'll do your questions. Or if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're watching on Facebook for that matter, if you text the phone number 22333, 22333, and in the message text Grace AZ and your question. Grace AZ and your question to 22333. It's right here. Then that will go into our question box. And one question at a time when you text in, but you can text in as many as you'd like. And if we have a lot of questions, we'll get to as many as we can. If you don't have a lot of questions, that's okay as well. And so hopefully I'm going to answer some of the questions for you. So we're going to use a lot of R words today. So we're talking about Grace Rises and how we're rising up now out of this pandemic. Excuse me. We are going to review. We're going to talk about the need to regroup a little bit. We're going to revision. We're going to talk about resilience. We're going to talk about reverend. Isn't that something? I stay up late at night thinking up those things. So those are some of the things that we're going to do throughout our time together. And hopefully we'll be able to get at some things and help you feel good about what's happening with your church home. We have reopened. There's another R word. We have reopened the building. And we've been learning some things about that as well. I want to start, first of all, by giving a shout out to your staff. Your staff has done absolutely remarkable work these last 14 months. And a number of you have said things to me. You've sent emails, and we're appreciative of that. But I want to just publicly thank each and every one of them for the hard work that they have done over these last 14 to 15 months to keep Grace going. And so I want to give a shout out to Michelle. Michelle does all of our bookkeeping. She does all of the legal stuff. And she keeps us on the straight and narrow. And Michelle's the one who every time you give a dime, she squeezes 25 cents out of it. And so she keeps us honest. She keeps us legal. She makes sure that our budget is run with integrity. And, of course, works with me and Jeff in terms of some of the bigger picture things. Kendra, who many of you know because when you come in to the in-house worship, she's there to greet you. And she not only is taking care of our hospitality, but she's making sure that we're connected with you. When prayer requests come in, she gets them to the prayer team, and she does some things as assigned by Michelle. Brita, many of you had a chance to hear her last week. She did an exceptional job for us as we were doing Mother's Day, and she has been really working here under incredible circumstances. She started in January of 2020. 2 months later, we're in lockdown, and she didn't really have a chance to build relationships with our families. And yet she's done a remarkable job over these last several months doing that, and today we had a fantastic event together outside in the parking lot, and we had families showing up. It was just a great time, so a shout out to Brita and to our new high school director, Emily, and to Tina and Liz, who are going to be doing middle school for us. Thanks as always to Alan, Pastor Alan, and his team, his prayer team. That prayer team has been on top of it since that COVID hit 15 months ago. And they have been sending out prayer shawls to people. They've been praying for you every day. They delivered gifts to certain people, have been making phone calls. They have done an exceptional job of making sure that we're connected to each other. Tony and Lisa, of course, helping out the team in terms of putting together some great quality worship online and now in-house again. Our fabulous tech team who makes sure that everything we're doing is working so that we can come to you online like we're doing right now. So we've got Diane who does all of our graphics, our website, Jeff who does whatever Diane asks him to do, Danny who runs our sound and is producing some of our videos for us, Steve who really makes all of this stuff happen on camera for us, Israel who does sound for us, Suzanne and her family who are busy keeping this campus clean for us, the interior of the campus, and of course Alicia who's been helping us do mission and ministry. And so you've got a great staff. Let's give them a round of applause. They have really kept grace over these last 15 months. So I don't want to be here all night long, neither do you, but we do have some things we want to talk about, so let's get at it and start with that first R, and that's review. So just a reminder of where we've been. I know you don't need to know this, but it will give some context for where we're going. I think it was March 13th, 14th, something like that, of 2020, we were all set to do in-house worship, and then on Friday before worship weekend, we said we're closing down. And we had to pivot immediately to online worship. Now, thankfully, we were kind of ready for that because we were live streaming our 10:30 Sunday morning service. But as we discovered over these last many months, to do online and do it well, we have to do it differently. We can't just stream the service. We needed to produce the videos. We needed good technological abilities to come to you so it looked like a great service. And so we quickly pivoted to online worship. We found new ways to do worship. We created Zoom. Brita created Zoom events with our kids. We had Zoom VBS. We did Monday through Friday for many, many months, almost a year. We were with you every night, Monday through Friday, doing prayer time or Bible studies at 6 o'clock. We did prayer emails. We did prayer visits. And so in some ways, during this time of lockdown, we were more connected with each other than ever before. We had access to each other almost every single day of the week. And so it's in some ways it's been really good, and we have learned a lot of things about what church is going to look like in the future, because we will always be online even while we're in-house, because we know there are a lot of people who are now going to watch us online. They can't be here every weekend, or maybe they don't even live in the area. And so we'll continue to do online. So we have been more connected really than ever before. But at the same time, we've missed each other more than ever before, obviously because we haven't been in the room together. We haven't been face to face. And so things have changed. So again, what we're doing now, online campus, we're going to continue to do that kind of stuff. We're always going to have our online service. We're always going to have an online presence, even as we ramp up getting back in-house again. So that's just a little bit of review. You know all of that. But part of what needs to happen now over these next several months is we need to regroup. And as is true for businesses, as is true for restaurants, as has been true for our government, we're not going to get through this pandemic unscathed. It's just the nature of the pandemic that there have been challenges for everybody, and that includes your church. I talked this weekend about the lines in the sand that people have drawn that have really shattered a lot of relationships. The line in the sand over masks, over the vaccines, over COVID itself, over race issues, over our politics. And just as those divides, those lines in the sand have divided families and friendships, it's also created some division in the Christian church. And our church is no exception. Now, there are some churches who have weathered this better than others. There are some churches where they have almost the same political worldview, the same theological worldview. And so if they decide that they're going to all wear masks, everybody's all in. If they decide they're not going to wear masks, everybody's all in. But in churches like ours, where we have a great mix of conservatives and progressives and everything in between, we're going to offend somebody. And we're going to offend people probably every week, no matter what we say about the virus, no matter what we say about COVID. And we have. You just can't help it. And so we know that we have lost some people. We have lost some people because of our mask policy. We have lost some people because we didn't open up soon enough. We've just lost people. We know that. But we don't know who we've lost yet completely. So we don't really know who's with us yet. We don't know who's moved on. We don't know who we've just lost because they just disconnected from the church. And so part of what needs to happen now over these next several months, and it's going to be difficult to do that in the summer months because it's the summer and people go on vacation and so on, we need to regroup. We sort of need to find out who we are. Right now in our in-house worship, we are running about 45 to 50% of what we should normally have in-house. And that's really good. The average is 30 to 40% throughout the country. So we're at about 45 to 50%. We still got a really good online attendance. So we know we're doing pretty well. But we need to know, what is it going to look like now in the weeks and months to come? What's it going to look like in the fall? Will people start coming back to the building? Will people, like my wife, prefer to watch online? We just don't know. Hey, Jan, by the way. So over the next several months, this is going to be a time for us to regroup, to find out who we are, to find out who's with us. One of the things we do know is we've reached a number of new families who came to us online. And now that we've opened up, they're starting to come to our worship services. So that's been really good. So another area where we need to regroup a bit is financially. And so let me give you some good news, some challenging news, and some good news. The good news is that we are okay financially. We are not in any financial danger of collapsing. We have still yet, in 16 years of ministry, starting with zero 16 years ago, starting a church in the middle of the Great Recession, keeping a church going during this pandemic, we have still had zero, that's zero payables in all of our time together. And a couple reasons for that. One is your generosity, but also your staff works really diligently. And we've made a decision as a staff and as a board that when money starts to get tight, we're going to take action immediately. And if we need to make some cuts in budget or even in salaries, we're going to do that because it's important for us to weather these storms. And we're not doing anything that other people didn't have to do. But during this period, we've been able to stay okay financially because Thrivent, who owns the mortgage on this building, worked with us so that we only had to make interest payments. So we saved several $1,000s a month. I took a pay cut for a while. We were able to get one of those PPP loans, and that helped us out. And your giving helped us out. Our giving actually went up. The challenge for us in all of this is that our budget wasn't being fully subscribed, and so we had to make some cuts in how we spend our money. And we did that again for the sake of this ministry so that we could say to you on a day like this, after all we've been through, we're still okay financially. We're in good shape. The challenging news, however, is that pretty soon we're going to have to start subscribing the whole budget once again. At some point, Thrivent's going to come to us and say, you need to start paying principal again. And that's going to be a large chunk of money every month. At some point, we're going to start ramping up programs again in-house. And we're going to need the finances to do that. At some point, we're going to be open more and more, and our bills are going to go up, right? To cool the place, to clean the place, and so on. And so this is an opportunity for us, those of us who love this church, to step back and say, God, what is it that you want me to do financially to support my congregation? We've lost some givers. This is an opportunity for some of us who maybe haven't been as faithful in our giving to say, God, maybe this is my opportunity now to step in because my church family needs me. My church family is depending on me and my generosity. And so it's just a chance for us to pray about it and to see where God wants to take us in our giving. Again, the giving has been good. That's not so much been the issue, but it hasn't been up to where the budget is. And slowly but surely, we're going to have to start subscribing to that full budget. And it's going to take all of us together to do that. So that's the challenging news as we regroup. You know, part of the financial news is going to be dependent on who's here and who's not. You know, so we're going to take some time to regroup, see who's still here. And we're trying to do that in a variety of ways. But here's my promise to you. Your staff and your board are committed to speaking to you reality when we need to do that about our finances. But we're not going to let this place go under. We are going to be diligent and faithful with the finances that you give so that this place can continue. We're going to have some tight times. We're going to have some good times. Right now is one of those tight times, but we're not going to let this thing get away from us. And we are going to be faithful to you in the way that we manage your finances, just as you are faithful to us in your generosity and giving. So when it comes to regrouping, we're not quite sure yet where we are. The dust hasn't settled. We don't know what our attendance is going to be going forward. We don't know really who's with us and who's not. We know some of the people who have left. We don't know where our finances are going to be 3, 4, 5 months from now. And so this is an opportunity, as has always been the case for us at Community of Grace, to follow Jesus and just go where Jesus is going and trust that Jesus is going to step us into the future and trust that God will make that happen, and we do that together. Let me just pause a moment. Jeff, do we have anything that people want to know about? I just want to get a drink of water here while we do that.
At this point, there have been no questions that come in.
That's very good. That means I am once again as articulate as I can possibly be, or that there's nobody watching. They're all watching Kojak. All right. So we've done a little review. We have talked about our need to regroup, and I'm going to come back to that because that's going to be important as we talk about our future. But one of the things that your staff has been doing over these last several months is a revisioning process. Now, that's not to say that what we've been doing we're going to throw out. But it is to say this is a new day. And all of the people that I'm reading, and of course my job as a pastor is to read what are the trends going on. And so I'm reading, I'm listening to other pastors, I'm listening to church experts and what they're saying and how the church is going to have to be different as a result of COVID. And one of those things, of course, is being more present online. One of those things is really looking at what is it that we're going to do, a laser focus on what we're going to do. So these are some of the questions that we've been working on, and we've been working with some various people. I've got a personal mentor who's been working with me, and then the staff and board have been working with actually one of our board members, John Burgess. So some of the questions that we're asking is, what is this congregation, what will this particular congregation look like post-COVID? What is our unique call? Right? Every church has a unique call. What is our call? And I'll get to that. What is our unique contribution to a broken world? Who are the people that we can reach that very few other congregations are maybe going to reach? Every congregation is good at reaching somebody. Who are we good at reaching? Who is that niche of people that most churches are missing, that God has called us to reach? And so what is our unique message? So those are the questions that we've been working on together. And so let me give you a little background of where we are in our process so far. Many of you know that this church was planted by a congregation called Community Church of Joy. Community Church of Joy used to be over on the Loop and 75th Avenue. I was a part of that church for 22 years. I was the associate pastor there. And that church had a very specific mission, and we were very clear on that mission. Our mission was to build a church for unchurched people, to build a church for people who don't go to church. And so we were constantly asking the question, why is it that people have left the church? What are the things that the church is doing that becomes a barrier to people coming back? And at that time, this is back in the 80s and the 90s, we knew that one of the things that was keeping people away from church was sort of a stuffy traditionalism, music that wasn't really relating to people my age at that time. I used to be young, and we were raised on rock and roll music, not so much organ music. We knew that sometimes when people would come to church for the first time that they didn't understand all the churchy language, and so we kept asking how do we share Jesus in a way that is accessible to people who've never heard about Jesus before. And we were very clear on that. And so every weekend when we put that worship service together, we kept asking the question, is this connecting with people who've never been to church? And we wanted to provide a place where Christian people could bring their friends and know that their friends would come and they'd hear a relevant message, they'd feel loved and cared for, they wouldn't be judged, and they'd walk away thinking, yeah, I could do this again. And so we were laser focused on that audience. And then throughout the rest of the week, we provided opportunities to help Christian people grow in their faith. And we received criticism for it, and that was okay. We were just able to say, look, this is our mission. This is our ministry. This is what God has called us to do, and we're not going to veer from that. So that's our DNA. That's where we came from. And the staff who came with me from Community Church of Joy, some of our congregation that came with us, that's our DNA. A passion for those who are disconnected from Jesus and the church. Now, about the time that we were starting our church, however, that sort of mission of building a church for unchurched people sort of fell out of favor with church leaders. And the new mantra was, let's not build a church for unchurched people. What unchurched people really want is they just want to see how Christians worship. And if it's real, if it's authentic, and they feel engaged by it, they'll come. But what unchurched people are saying is, don't create a church for me. You show me how you worship, and I'll decide whether or not I want to be a part of it. And we didn't fully subscribe to that. We sort of straddled the fence a little bit, because our DNA was always to ask the question, how do we do a worship service that's engaging for people who've never been to church before? But at the same time, we knew that people wanted to see how Christians worship. And so we tweaked things a little bit. I have always tried to preach the gospel in a way that is accessible to people who've never heard about Jesus before. But in my preaching, rather than asking the question, what does an unchurched person need to hear? I would start with the question, what do we as Christians need to hear from Jesus today to get us back out to live the Christian faith? And so we would do a bit more Bible-oriented sermons, the life of Jesus. We just did a series on Old Testament characters several months ago. And so as we've been asking this question, who are we? It's really been an opportunity for us as a staff and a board to go back and say, what is our DNA? What are we really passionate about? What are we good at? And whenever I would ask the staff, what are we really good at? These are the kinds of answers I'd get. We're really good at creating a Disney show. Well, now that doesn't seem awfully churchy, does it? Doesn't seem terribly spiritual. In fact, if you've ever been to our Disney show, we never mentioned the name Jesus once. And yet, those of you who've been to the Disney show, those of you who brought your friends who never go to church to that Disney show, you know that something really spiritual happens during that show. There's something sacred about that moment when God simply shows up through good, fun music, reaching out to people to say, you know what, it's okay to be here. It's safe to be here. And hopefully after being at the Disney show, people think, man, if that's what that church is like, I'm going to check it out. We do that same kind of thing for our Christmas services, our Christmas show, our musical theater camp that we do in the summertime. And we kept talking about these things that we do that other churches really aren't doing, where we're creating environments of grace, where people can have a point of contact with the church that is non-threatening, and yet God does something. God shows up. And that's our DNA. That's who we were 16 years ago when we started this church. And so we've been talking a little bit about maybe God is calling us in this moment to go back to our future, to reclaim that DNA, and to be the unique church that we're called to be. Because I think what makes us unique, we're not the only church, but what makes us unique are two things. One, we do know how to do things to connect with people who've not been to church and to make church a comfortable place. We know how to do that. And we also share a radically different message than many churches today. And that radically different message is that God loves you and God loves your friends. It doesn't matter what your politics are. It doesn't matter what your sex is, what your gender is. It doesn't matter even what you believe about God. Even if you have doubts, we want you here. God wants you here. This is a place where you can be safe and be who you are. We do those two things well. So as we've been talking about who we're going to be in our DNA, one of the things that we've talked about, well, let me say it, one of the things I've talked about is that to say we're a church for the unchurched isn't so much a helpful phrase anymore because people are so distanced from the church now. When we were a church for the unchurched back 20 years ago, it's because people had been in church and they left the church. Now people have not even been to church before. They have no church memory at all. They just know they don't want to be here because they think they're going to be judged. They know that much. So really, rather than being a church for the unchurched, we have to go out another layer and be a church for spiritual refugees. And those spiritual refugees are the people I just talked about. They're people who really are hungry for God's grace, may not know it, but they know something's missing inside. They're struggling with questions about life. They're struggling with relationships. They're struggling with doubt about God. They've maybe been confronted in college class with the Bible being false because evolution is true. These are spiritual refugees. They're not anti-God. They're not anti-Jesus. They're just sort of anti-church. And I think what we can do is to create an environment here together that says to you, you can bring your friends here. And if they've got doubts, if they've got hurts, if they're broken people, this is the place for them. And so I think what's going to happen over these next several weeks and months is we're going to dig deep into that. We're going to reclaim that DNA. And we're going to work together to continue to build a church that on the weekends, you're not only spiritually inspired, but your friends are inspired with the good news of Jesus, that God loves them with a radical love so that they might hear the call to follow Jesus as well. Now, you might be asking, well, what is that going to mean for our worship services? Well, it may not necessarily mean a lot in the short term, but we're going to just think about it a little bit differently. As we think about the music that we choose, I'm going to think about it a bit differently as I think about the sermons that we're doing. And you may not even notice the difference, but it's going to be in my head. But the one thing that I do hope you'll understand is that when you start coming back to church, this building, that when you do so, I hope you're praying about people who you know are spiritual refugees. People that you've talked to who, boy, they just have this hunger for life, this hunger for God, and maybe, just maybe, this is going to be the place for them. And if they don't come on a weekend worship service, maybe once we get back to a Disney show or we get to our Christmas Eve services coming up here in just a couple weeks, all right, couple months, a lot of months, that we're going to have a place for them. And I also hope you'll do that with with our Facebook worship. Even if you come in-house, when you go home, at some point on the weekend, share the worship service on Facebook to your Facebook page. Because there are people out there who are hungering for Jesus right now, and they need a church that very clearly says, you are loved by the radical love of Jesus Christ, period. God never comes to you with anger. God never comes to you out of condemnation, only out of grace to fill you with life. And that's the kind of church that we want to be. And I'll just speak for myself. I'm really excited about rolling up my sleeves and getting at it with you. And as we rediscover who we're going to be. So again, we're asking the question, what do we do best? What's the story? What story of Jesus do we tell best? How do we create these grace environments that welcome people? And how can we be that church that says to spiritual refugees, God loves you and Jesus, and you're welcome here. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter what you believe, you're welcome here, and Jesus is going to meet you here. And again, we'll create environments where you can bring some of your friends. So that's some of the revisioning that we're doing. And again, you'll maybe see some tweaks, maybe you won't. We know they're there. In our worship services, children's ministry, I'm really excited about what Brita is doing with her team, with Emily and Tina and Liz, in terms of youth ministry. We're going to be doing some things in between our worship services on Sunday, starting in the fall, for our kids for about a half hour. Still keep the kids in worship with us because that's really important. We've upped our game already for junior high. We've upped our game already for senior high. We're going to continue to do great Bible studies for our women, for our men. We'll add other things in as well. And so I think you're going to see some good things happening here coming out of COVID. The next R is resilience. Resilience. All right, so we've reviewed We need to regroup to kind of find out who we are, and a part of that regrouping is revisioning and really getting laser clear on who God has called us to be as a church. And then as a congregation, we want to make sure that we're constantly building resilience. And what I mean by that is that while we exist for the sake of others, and we do exist for the sake of others, we want to be mindful of the fact that we're building a church not for just right now, but for the long haul. And how do we do both, right? To recognize that today is the day, now is the moment, but we want to make sure that we're here for generations to come. Long after I'm gone, we want to make sure this church is still vibrant and alive. And so that means making decisions all the time that will help us be sustainable in terms of our finances, sustainable in terms of programming, sustainable in terms of staff. And again, that comes down to the way your board and your staff work together. It comes down to our giving. It comes down to our generosity as a church to other people. And so building resilience. And we've shown ourselves to be a resilient church for 16 years, right? It's not been easy. We've had a couple good years, but man, when you go through the Great Recession and then you go through this and we're still standing and still talking about it, this is a resilient congregation. And so we want to make sure that we're sustainable. And so that means that right now your staff and board, we're looking at everything and we're asking, how can we be sustainable? What ministries do we need? What ministries maybe aren't sustainable that we can let go of right now? We're talking about the studio that we own, the house that we own. What do we do with that? How can that help us be sustainable? So we're looking at all kinds of things so that we build resilience into the church, because we're going to go through more periods of this kind of stuff. There'll be another recession someday. Hopefully there'll never be another pandemic, at least in our lifetime. But we'll go through these times again, and we want to build resiliency and sustainability. All right. I've got one more R, and that's the Reverend for pastor. But Jeff, anything yet, or have I been really just so clear?
I actually have two questions, but I'm going to hold one because I think you're going to answer it with the final R.
All right.
But I did have one here. As I discussed with the pastor, apparently somebody had this discussion with you, Saturday night services are important to many of us. Also, try to get back to normal so we can greet each other and have a cookie.
Yes, okay. So great questions, great questions. Yes, we know that Saturday night is important. But again, part of it is, please hear me, it's not that Saturday night people don't matter. Your staff has doubled their workload over this year, because now we have to do an online service, and so we record that on Saturday, plus do in-house worship, plus the stuff that we've been doing online during the week. And the reality right now is, when we've been doing Saturday services, and we've done a few of them, we did some when we opened up the first time in the fall, we've done some since we've opened up again. We've been averaging about 20 people on Saturday. It's not that 20 people don't matter, but as a staff, and I hope you'll understand this and appreciate it, we do have to watch our energy levels as well. When you put a service together live, that means you have to get people here. They have to do a sound check. They have to rehearse the music. It's usually a different group of people than it is on Sunday morning. And to do all of that work when we're averaging 20 people, and that's in the big months. When we go down into the summer months, 10, 15 people. Right now, it's not sustainable for us to do Saturday. And some of you are going to be really offended by that. You're going to think, well, we don't matter. You do matter. But in the scheme of things, if we burn our staff out and we're not sustainable, we're not going to be around to do Christmas this year. And so we have to make some really tough decisions right now to be sustainable. Our hope is to open back up Saturday nights in the fall. We'll see. I can't make that promise yet. We've even had some people say, why are you doing 2 services on Sunday morning? You should just do one. And we've talked about it, but at this point, we're still going to do 2 services on Sunday morning, and we'll always be with you Saturday night online. So I hope that doesn't sound harsh. That's just the reality right now. We have to be sustainable. We have to be smart in the energy that your staff is putting out. I know some of you are really anxious to get going with greeting each other in hospitality. We're not ready for that yet. We have people here who come to this service who haven't had a chance to get vaccinated yet. We've got children who are here. And so as Christian people, and I'm going to say something now this is where some of you are going to be offended and maybe go to other churches, but this is where we stand. We still believe the COVID is here. We still believe it's dangerous. We still believe it can spread. And so it's our responsibility to love our neighbors as we love ourselves, to put others first. And until we get the all clear from the CDC and people who are smarter than I am, we just can't open up cookies. We can't, and we don't even know how to open up cookies yet. Because I'm guessing a number of you have no problem picking up a cookie with your hand and eating it. And others of you, you're going to walk in, and if that thing's not in a wrapper and seal wrapped and have a stamp of approval on it, you're not touching it. And those are the things that we have to work out. So we're not even ready yet to talk about opening up the lobby because we don't know what we have to do to be ready for you. What we do know is we have to make it safe. And so I hope you understand that. It's really hard to be patient, but we're trying to make the best decisions that we possibly can. And here's what I'll say about these decisions that we made all through COVID. There have been people who have agreed with us, people who have disagreed with us. I've had people who have agreed with us one week and then disagree with us the next week, depending on the decision we make. All of our decisions are based on the principles of this church. That when we choose to follow Jesus, we give up our own rights and we do what Jesus does, and we put the needs of others ahead of our own. And right now, the needs of the people that concern us as a church are those who are not yet safe from COVID. And until we feel like everybody's safe, we're still going to take some precautions. We'll slowly open, but that's the nature of this church. And so I hope that answers your question. And I'm really glad you asked it because I know a lot of other people are asking that too. So it gives me a chance to kind of explain what's happening with Saturday. And we had a few people here a week ago Saturday. They said, are we going to keep this up? I said, I think you're going to look around and you're going to find out why we aren't for a while. And afterwards, when we had 25 people here, they said, okay, we get it. We understand. But we want it to start soon. And I said, we're working on it, but it probably won't be till the fall. All right? But we're still there for you. Sunday morning, online. All right? Thank you for asking that. Yep, good? Okay. All right, I just heard a bunch of TVs turning off. All right. And maybe that was they were turning off Kojak. All right, so this is the last point I want to make. Let me give you some background. About 4 or 5 years ago, we started looking for an associate pastor. And we did a lot of work to get ready for that. We spent a year before we even started the call process. A group of us met with a consultant, and we went through some of the process that we're going through now, sort of revisioning who are we, what kind of pastor are we going to need. And then we put a call committee together. And our intention at that time was to call a pastor who would be our associate pastor. And when the time came for me to retire, which is going to happen sooner rather than later, that person would be ready to become our senior pastor. So that was what we were looking for, my successor, so to speak. We did probably 7 interviews, and then I did several more, just myself as a screening. And we couldn't find anybody at that time that we felt God was calling to this place to play that role of my successor. And so we decided, after 7-8 months of trying to find somebody, that we needed to put a halt to that. And we made a tactical decision that rather than looking for my successor, we would take that off the table. We wouldn't even worry about it. We would just look for a really good associate who may or may not be my successor, but we took that off the table. And the week after we made that decision, Kathleen Lotz showed up at our pastor buddies meeting. She was just a couple weeks away from graduating from seminary. She's going to be open to a call. And I said, would you be interested in talking to me about being our associate pastor? Now again, we didn't call Pastor Kathleen to be my successor. That was off the table. That certainly could have been a discussion, but that wasn't even a part of our discussion with her. We just wanted to call her to be our associate pastor and to focus primarily on family ministry, women's ministry, and then she did some work with pastoral care, and of course she preached once a month and was part of our leadership team. And so we all just thought Kathleen was fantastic, thought she'd be a great associate pastor, and we called her to be our associate pastor. And I am really proud to say that after a couple years here of doing really great work, she is now a solo pastor. And she's doing her own thing up at a church in Iowa. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see her online worship yet. The church is very different than ours. It's very liturgical, but she is doing an outstanding job. And I'm really proud of her. And I'm proud of you being a congregation who sort of helped her get her wings and her confidence, and now she's a solo pastor. And she's doing a great job. So that leaves us, of course, without an associate pastor. And many of you have been asking, so are we going to replace Pastor Kathleen? So this is where we get back to regrouping. We're not ready to call an associate pastor because we still don't know where we are. We're just coming out of this pandemic. We don't know what the life of this congregation is going to look like. We don't know what our budget is going to look like. And so we need to take between now and at least the end of this year to regroup and see where we are. And just sort of get our bearings once again. Get to know each other once again. Quite frankly, right now, we don't have enough money to afford a new associate pastor. And so we couldn't, if we wanted to do it today, we couldn't afford it anyway. So we're going to take the rest of this year just to regroup, to revision, regroup, regather, all these great R words, and kind of renew this congregation. Oh, there's another R word. I'm just really hot on the R words today. And once we've done that, then hopefully in January, we will begin the process, assuming that financially we're okay, of looking for a new associate pastor. So we'll do the same process again. We'll put a call team together. We will put a job description together. We'll start working with our synod. We're saying this is the kind of person we're looking for. And we will begin that process, and it will take as long as it takes. And so that's where we're at. So for those of you who are itching for a new associate pastor, it's not going to happen for a while. We're not at a place of sustainability where we can do that. And we really need to take our time to make sure that we're ready. The church has changed. And so the skill set that we're going to need for a new associate pastor is probably a little different than what we needed 4 or 5 years ago. And so all of that is really important for us as we think through the next pastor, the next associate pastor for our staff. So I hope that helps and gives you sort of an explanation of what's going on. The board is fully engaged with this. The staff is on board with this. And right now we have other pressing things going on. And so to add putting a new pastor in place, that's just something right now that would probably distract us from the things we need to get done in order to call a new pastor. So that's where we are with the new pastor. It's going to be a little while, but it will happen. Some of you, you're probably wondering yourself, man, that Tim, he's getting pretty old. Does he still have enough in him to get us through the next couple of years? I think I do. All right? I don't feel like I'm ready to go anywhere yet. I'm ready to give it all I have and ready to do what we can to make sure that this place is sustainable and resilient for generations to come. So there you have it. That's a lot of bit maybe, of what's happening with your church home. I am certainly open to more questions before we go, if you have them. I realize that some of this is delayed, so I have to stall a little bit. Some of you, I'm talking, and some of you are seeing this a minute later. So I recognize that there may be some questions that come yet for us. So, Jeff, do we have anything that you feel like I have not yet said, or are there some questions coming in that we need to sort of tackle?
One question that came in, they said, I'm on board with the revisioning and the focus. I like it. Have you considered doing a survey to ask people where they are right now, i.e. watching online, waiting to come back, have already come back?
Yeah, we actually put together a survey a few months ago when Kathleen was here. She was working on that. and it was going to ask those kinds of questions. And the survey just didn't happen, partly because Pastor Kathleen left. And we just haven't gotten around to it yet, and it's a great idea, just to find out where people are. I will say, however, that you have all been very, very good about connecting with us because we've been connecting with you. And so we do have a sense of some things. I will say, just so you sort of get a sense of the balance that we've had, and this isn't so you feel bad for us, right? But this is sort of the balance. We have been open in-house worship since March. Last weekend, we eased up on some of our social protocols, mask wearing, and so on. And I had a number of people here last weekend who said, thank you for finally opening up. Well, we'd already been open up for 6, 7, 8 weeks. But it's the difference in the way that we hear things. For some people, we're opened up as long as we have masks on, we're opened up. For other people, we're open up when we take the masks off. And so I think part of what happened was some of you who think we should still be wearing masks, you stopped coming. And those of you who think we shouldn't be wearing masks, you started coming. And that's just the challenge that we're living with. And, let's get rid of this damn virus. And then we can get back together and start doing church. And I use that word not as a swear word. I think we all know what I mean by using that word. All right? Yeah. I'm looking at you, Jeff.
Oh, sorry. I was in shock.
I wasn't swearing. I was saying what this is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's it. Those were all the questions.
Oh, man, I shut him up with that word, huh? Now we're going to get a lot of letters. The pastor swore. That was not a swear word.
Oh,
I hope. Here it comes.
Something came in. Is it possible to follow the normal process for communion?
The answer to that is going to be no for a while. Again, some of you, this is the deal, some of you would be just fine having people up here handing you wafers and grape juice. Others of you would be horrified. And it doesn't strike us as safe enough yet to do that. Again, we're going to have people coming up here, kids coming up. They're not vaccinated. They're still vulnerable. And even though we know that kids don't necessarily get as sick, we have been seeing in this country and other countries that increasingly the people getting sick are kids and younger people, and they're getting pretty sick. So this thing isn't over yet. So we just we're going to do the things that we can do, like these pandemic communion kits. We're still doing communion. It's not as nice, but we're still able to receive the body and blood of Christ. And we're doing it in a safe way. And as soon as we can, we'll get back to normal. I miss it just like the rest of you do. But again, we're going to put safety first. And then we'll move along. So we've sort of eliminated our masks. Some of you are really glad. Some of you aren't so glad. And then slowly but surely, over the next several months, hopefully, if we as a country can get our act together and do the things necessary, this thing will get to a point where we can all live with it together. So it's a good question. I appreciate it, but it's going to be a while yet, I think. Okay?
That's it.
All righty. Okay. Well, I appreciate all of you, and I hope that you have been inspired by what you hear, that you have been moved to say, yeah, I want to buy into this church. I hope that maybe you appreciate some of the challenges that we as a staff and a board have in trying to manage all of you people that we love very much that come from a variety of different viewpoints on COVID and the pandemic. I hope that we can continue to connect with each other. We will do that online every weekend. We're still going to be in-house now at 9 and 10:30. We're going to come to you online during the week. And I'm still going to be sending out, I hope once a month to send out an email to you where I'm praying for you, and I get a lot of response to that. So we're still your church. We've been the church. And one thing we've learned during this is you don't need a building to be the church. The other thing we've learned is it's nice to have a building to be the church. But the first thing we learned is you don't need to have a building to be a church. The second thing we learned is it's good to have a building to be a church. And we need to do both. All right? So let me have a word of prayer with you, and then we'll call it a day, but I'll check in with Jeff one more time. Heavenly Father, thank you for the chance that we've had to be together to talk about important things. And these are hard things. Some of us are ready to go. We're sick of it. Let's just go. And others of us are cautious, and we recognize that there's still COVID out there. And to try to walk this delicate balance has not always been easy. But I pray that as a community of faith, even if we don't always agree with the protocols we put in place, we can say the heart is in the right place. And we're going to follow Jesus on this one. And in the scheme of things, this is a blip in time. And we want to do it right for the sake of others. I pray that you would pour down your grace and your Spirit upon this congregation. And I pray that you would give us the courage to live into the vision that you have given to us, to be a place of grace, to be a place of compassion, to be a place of justice and mercy that attracts spiritual refugees, people that you love, and that empowers us to go back out into the world with the grace, the justice, the mercy, the kindness, and compassion that you showed us through the death and resurrection of Jesus. It's in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen. All right, Jeff, we're still good? All right, everybody, thank you. Good night.